Hey, this is Mohal Joshi from Los Angeles, California. I follow Indian foreign policy and defense with a special focus on Asia. You can follow me on Twitter at Mohal Joshi.
Hey, this is Kishore Narayan from Bengaluru in India. I am an international relations expert specializing in global security, conflict resolution, and international negotiation. My focus areas include peace building and digital diplomacy. You can find me on Twitter at Veggie Diplomat.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 of India Rising Strategic Affairs Conversations with Mohal and Kishore, a show in which we analyze the happenings from around the world and their impact on India. So, listeners, in today's episode, we will be talking about the surprise decision taken by the Indian government to revoke Article 370, which guaranteed special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, after weeks and days of intense speculation around the situation in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, the Modi government finally revealed its cards on August 5th, Monday, just this past Monday, and in one fell swoop, fundamentally transformed India's relationship with the state. The current Home Minister Amit Shah announced in Parliament the scrapping of Article 370, which exempted Jammu and Kashmir from the Indian Constitution, except the Article 1 part of it and Article 370, and permitted the state to draft its own constitution. The state will now be bifurcated into two union territories: Ladakh, which would be without a legislature or an assembly as it's called, and Jammu and Kashmir, which will have its own legislature. While the government received the support in parliament from parties like BSP, AAP, BJD, YSR, and its ally JDU walked out of the house in opposition to the move. Predictably, political leaders from the state called the move unconstitutional and warned of dangerous consequences. Now, in some ways, the move should not have been surprising given that BJP has talked about abrogation of Article 370 and 35A in its 2019 manifesto and also its previous manifestos. They have never been shy of making their preferences clear on this matter. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, the founder of the Bharatiya Jansangh, the predecessor to the current BJP, was imprisoned by the Sheikh Abdullah government in Srinagar, where he died in 1953, championing the cause of fuller integration of Jammu and Kashmir with India. Since then, this issue has resonated with the rank and file in the party. The Modi's government's strong mandate for a second term has all but ensured that this issue would be up front and center for its new agenda. For any government, this issue is a tinderbox, but PM Modi has time and again demonstrated his penchant for calibrated risk taking. So the last few weeks saw the ground gradually being prepared for such a move, which would have long-term consequences for the country and could potentially be the high watermark of the Modi government if managed carefully. So, Kishore, can you let us know about the domestic politics in the, I would say, like now the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, since it's a union territory now?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have to take the listeners all the way back up to 2014 when the state had its legislature elections. Remember, as part of the Article 370, Jammu and Kashmir had a 6-year term for its legislature as compared to 5-year terms in the rest of the country. Now, in the 2014 state elections to the legislature, which had 87 seats in total, this led to a hung assembly with the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, becoming the single largest party with 28 seats. The BJP, the ruling party in the center, became the second largest party with 25 seats. Now, the PDP and the BJP alliance, under the leadership of Mufti Muhammad Saeed, came into power and they were providing the administration until the untimely death of the Chief Minister Mufti Muhammad Haid. At that point in time, there was a vacuum for about 3 months, and by April of that year, 2016, uh, his daughter Mehbooba Mufti became the Chief Minister, thereby again having a second innings for the PDP-BJP alliance. Now, immediately after Mehbooba Mufti became the chief minister in the summer of 2016, Burhan Wani, a commander of the terror group Hizbul Mujahideen, was killed in an encounter by the Indian armed forces. This resulted in a massive unrest in the Kashmir Valley for almost 2 years, with stone pelting reaching abnormally high levels. Now it slowly dawned upon the establishment that the earlier demands of Azadi, roughly translated to independence, were now being replaced by demands for jihad. It was accused that Pakistan was funding the Hurriyat and the other actors who would organize these stone pelting protests. As the investigations into the root causes of stone pelting dug deeper, dangerous patterns emerged as to how mainstream political party, the PDP, which was ruling the state, either turned a blind eye or was in cahoots with the separatists like the Hurriyat. BJP, on its part, had to face brickbats for not able to convince its alliance partner to rein in the stone pelters. However, in June 2018, a little over 2 years after Mehbooba Mufti assumed power, things changed irreversibly when BJP revoked the support and Mehbooba Mufti had to quit, resulting in governor's rule. 6 months later, in November, there were attempts by both the BJP and the PDP to form governments separately. BJP wanted to prop up Sajjad Lone, an ex-militant turned legislator who has his own party called the People's Conference, or the Jammu and Kashmir People's Conference in full. As the chief, they wanted the Sajjad Lone as the chief minister and piggyback on him to establish firm control over the valley. However, at the same time, PDP, led by Mehbooba Mufti, and the National Conference, led by Omar Abdullah, were attempting the unthinkable of coming together to form an alliance with the support of the Congress party. While all this was happening and Mehbooba had outsmarted the BJP and had sent out a letter to the governor claiming majority in the assembly, the governor himself did not acknowledge the receipt of the facts and issued a recommendation to the union government asking for dissolution of the state assembly. Almost immediately, New Delhi had imposed governor's rule on the state of Jammu and Kashmir, leaving both the mainstream political parties fuming. This meant that the general elections were due in less than 4 months, and New Delhi could not have taken any decision at that point in time. Now, 4 5 months after the general elections, now in August 2019, the central government, led by BJP again, has finally decided to dilute or revoke Article 370 and also bifurcate the state into two union territories.
Yeah,
Now,
so
during
Kishore,
the
I think, sorry, like just in years to come, assuming
Mhm,
this stands up the legal scrutiny, I think
mhm.
the role of this mysterious fax machine will be talked about for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that was the day when the state machinery would shift from Srinagar to Jammu
Jammu.
as
Mm-hmm.
part of the annual Jamboree, where they change
Mm-hmm.
from the summer capital to the winter capital and then back. So that day was the day when the apparatus would shift from Srinagar to Jammu,
Mm-hmm.
and the governor used that as an excuse to claim that
Mm-hmm.
he was either busy to not pick up the
Yeah.
calls
Mm-hmm.
or his fax machine was not working.
Yeah, so in the
So,
annals of history, I mean, this is going to be probably the most talked about fax machine in Indian history, probably.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so continuing from where we left, now during the first tenure of Modi, it was often alleged that the NDA did not have a Kashmir policy worth debating. And Mohan, you and I have been speaking about this in our earlier episodes as well.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
we have kind of discussed how NDA's Kashmir policy was kind of going nowhere. Now, now that we see that all the moves made by BJP were pointing in one direction only to ensure that safety and security of people are safeguarded and also to ensure that politically thorny issues are also dealt with. BJP has now come out with a definite plan for the future of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, not restricting itself to only dealing with terrorists disturbing peace and order. It has shown its determination to move ahead simultaneously on many fronts towards peace and prosperity in the troubled state. Hence, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir will have a legislature. There will be no curtailment of political activity. However, narrow party interests will not become impediments in the path of development and progress. In fact, Mohal, I was shocked to hear that the Gram Panchayat had absolutely no power. They were just rubber stamps in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and they did not get any money to spend on the local villages. So all that would now change with the abrogation of Article 370 and the central government playing an active role. So the Gram Panchayats will now be empowered through direct funding, and they would now become the building blocks to usher in democratic processes at the grassroots level, besides serving as nurseries for future political leadership. It's good that the government finally has got its act together and now has a Kashmir policy worth talking about. Mohal?
Yeah, and even the not only the Gram Panchayats but also the local body elections hadn't been held for a quite some time, and finally, under the governor's rule, they were held late last year. Which interestingly, both Umar Abdullah's
Both.
National Conference and Mehbooba Mufti's PDP had boycotted, and which resulted in BJP and like Congress winning a lot of the seats. So there was a issue that the gram panchayats and the local bodies were not being given enough attention, and the Kashmir was run on the writ of two major political families.
In fact, by virtue of those two parties boycotting the local body elections, BJP ended up grabbing the local bodies in many towns and cities in Kashmir Valley
Hmm.
as well,
Yeah,
not just
yeah.
in Jammu or in Ladakh area.
Yeah, just that the voting percentage in some of those elections was very low. But anyways, so let's move on to the legal quagmire that many had referred to Article 370. So Kishore, can you please elaborate for the listeners on it?
Yeah, so let's just try to briefly explain what happened and how Article 370 was abrogated. So basically, what the Union government did was that they used Article 370 against itself and abrogated it. Let me explain. Home Minister Amit Shah introduced two bills, one resolution, and also tabled one presidential order regarding Jammu and Kashmir. In total, there were four items. One was a constitution order of 2019. Another was a resolution for repeal of Article 370 of the Constitution. The third one was Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill 2019. And then the fourth one was Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Second Amendment Bill 2019. So in step one, the 2019 President's Order removed 35A and removed Article 35A and all other special privileges to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, what happened was that this order, because of the clause 1D of Article 370, gives the President of India power to do so, provided that it is in consultation with the government of the state, currently meaning the governor of the state. Now, clause 1D kind of applies in relation to that state, subject to any exceptions and modifications as the President may by order specify. In simple words, in simple layman terms, Clause 1D of Article 270 of Article 370 implies that only the President, through a written confirmation from the state legislative body, can expand or contract the scope of Article 370. That is all it meant. Now, what happens now is the 2019 order supersedes its own predecessor, the 1954 order issued by the then president in concurrence with the then state legislature. The 1954 order had given astonishing autonomy to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, most important and outrageous of them being the introduction of the Article 35A into existence, giving Jammu and Kashmir legislature exclusive powers to define who would be the permanent residents, how to give them special rights and privileges, and also impose restrictions on outsiders, put special conditions for state government employment, etc., etc. In addition, the 1954 order also added a proviso to the Article 3 of the Constitution stating that no bill can be tabled in the Parliament without the consent of Jammu and Kashmir legislature if it dealt with increasing or diminishing the area or altering the name or boundary of the state. Now, Mohal, if you remember, we had quite a few conversations on Twitter with a few other people where everybody thought that an automatic trifurcation of the state would imply that Article 370 would go away. Now, unfortunately, that was not the case, and we kept repeating the same thing to everybody, telling unless and until Article 370 is repealed, the state could not be the state boundaries could not be modified in any form or shape. Anyway, be that as it may, now with the 2019 order, it did away with the whole 1954 order, including the about troop privileges that I just mentioned. Now, in step 2, the 2019 order makes the whole Indian constitution applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, uh, wherein the clause 2 of the 2019 order extends all the provisions of the Indian constitution to that state. Now, remember that the only condition mandated by clause 1D of Article 370 to issue such an order is that it should be in concurrence with the government of the state, which at present is the governor. So this is perfectly legal and constitutional. Now let's move to step 3. Using the Article 370 to kill Article 370 via something called the Article 367. Now the 2019 order amended the Article 367 of the Constitution, which generally deals with the general rules regarding the interpretation of the Constitution, to insert 4 sub-clauses which clarify that references to the state government in Article 370, references to the state government or Sadr a Riyasat in Article 370 should be construed as reference to the governor of the state. Most importantly, the 2019 order via Article 367 amended Clause 3 of Article 370, which allowed the President to abrogate Article 370 itself. And that is why I said that the government used Article 370 on 370 itself by virtue of the Article 367. Now, since the condition was that the President needed concurrence of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, but that Constituent Assembly ceased to exist in 1956 itself. Hence, the Article 370 had taken a permanent form. Now, anyway, now switching over to step 4, with all this, the Parliament now recommended removal of Article 370 to the President. Now, given that Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Assembly's powers are with the Parliament, Amit Shah moved a resolution in both houses to recommend to the President the removal of Article 370. Essentially, the government used Article 371D to pass the 2019 presidential order, rendering the whole Article 370 itself obsolete, and then passed a resolution in both houses to even remove the obsolete Article 370 and replacing it with a simple statement extending all provisions of Indian Constitution to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. With this came step 5, wherein the whole state was bifurcated, and as part of the bifurcation, the two parts of the state were then, I don't want to use the word demoted, but were then transformed into union territories, which Mohal, you already spoke about. Ladakh will not have a legislature, but the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir will have a legislature and will have its own chief minister. And that is where the local political parties like the National Conference and the PDP can continue to be relevant if the people of the state, if the people of the union territory wish. So this was how legally,
But mhm.
yeah, so this was how legally the central government kind of made use of the loopholes within the system to abrogate the Article 370. Mohal?
Yeah, so I think the important thing is that converting it to union territory also had one more impact. I mean, comparing it to like a state of Delhi or NCT, National Capital Territory, which means that the important security functions like police would come under the purview of the central government. So the
Correct.
Jammu and Kashmir police would not be controlled by the local PDP or national conference in case they came to power, but would be under the purview of the central government, which would help them to control the situation better versus a local party which would have soft separatist leanings to go easy on the terrorist in the state.
Yeah. So one allegation there on the central government is that with the state now being split and Jammu and Kashmir now becoming a union territory, this will not give enough scope for local political parties to exist anymore. But then that allegation is unfounded simply because we have a union territory like Puducherry, which has its own political party and which continues to be a major player within the union territory. So PDP, National Conference, and even the People's Conference of Sajjad Loon can continue to be relevant if they again win the heart and minds of the people.
And same for like Aam Aadmi Party, like they are not a national party per se, and they are still in power in Delhi.
Right. Yes. Yes. So yeah, I think that was about the legal quagmire and how the union government managed to get out of it. Let's switch perspectives. And
So
Mohal,
one
if you
last thing
can.
here. So the
Mhm.
370 basically hasn't been totally abrogated because Article 1 is still a part of it, which I think states that it's a part of India, correct?
No,
But it's like they just
Article 1 was Article 1 was like the overarching article within the Constitution, which kind of refers to the geographical extent of the state that is India. So Article 1 would not be directly related to 370 that continues without
Mhm.
any change.
But
But Article
370 has been
370
more like diluted versus totally abrogated.
diluted because of the because of clause 1D within the Article 370.
Hmm.
You are right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So switching over now, Mohal, if you can now talk about the Pakistani angle to the whole unfolding of the events.
Yeah, so these developments definitely caught the Pakistanis by surprise as they didn't expect Article 370 to ever go away in their lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Pakistan tried to court various nations to put pressure on India, but I mean, most of them said that since it was an internal matter of India, they had nothing really to say in the matter. I mean, there was just like one single protest from the usual suspect, Turkey, which has had close relations with Pakistan. Even during Balakot, they expressed their support with Pakistan in a mild statement. Even China, like their close ally or their iron brother, didn't come to their support by supporting their position against India. On a side note, I mean, China did express its opposition to India's move to create a separate territory, Union territory of Ladakh, which they claim is part of Western Tibet, and they claim as being part of their territory. But there was no mention of the Jammu and Valley regions, which are in dispute by Pakistan with India. Now, if you remember, like just a few weeks ago, in the end of July, the Pakistanis had considered the visit of their Prime Minister Imran Khan and Army Chief General Bajwa to Washington as a huge success. I mean, they must be have been rubbing their hands in glee when U.S. President Donald Trump, in his meeting with Imran Khan, mentioned like about offering to mediate between India and Pakistan on the Kashmir issue. I mean, in India, the response to this offer of so-called offer of mediation, which as per Trump came from directly from PM Modi, was immediately uh, pushed back and clarified by Indian MEA to be simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at that at a more global picture, with the withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan under Trump, Pakistan with their Taliban and Haqqani proxies would want to gain control in Afghanistan. So this way they can gain their so-called strategic depth against India by controlling who rules Afghanistan. Now, once the security cover of the NATO-led forces is gone, the civilian government could very well be deposed in Kabul with the Taliban returning to power. Now, this has potential to cause deterioration of India-Afghanistan ties, plus danger to India's projects in Afghanistan, which could come under immediate security threat. Now, no one needs a reminder that post-withdrawal of another great power, the USSR in 1989 from Afghanistan, resulted in a terrorist spilling over into Jammu and Kashmir to create massive problems for India. So, Kishore, anything you have to add here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 2 points. One is on the 5th of August, and when the events were unfolding in the Indian Parliament, the Pakistani establishment, as you rightly said, they were kind of taken by surprise, and the earliest reactions coming in from Islamabad were actually quite muted, and it actually took them 2 to 3 days to convene a special parliament session in Islamabad and then come out with an official statement. But within that period of the 3 days, there were muted responses, and they were even questioning as to how Article 370 was of no use, and how India and the state of Jammu and Kashmir had literally no ties connecting them, despite the presence of Article 370. Now, within 3 days, in the Parliament, they passed a resolution telling that Article 370 was the only link that connected Srinagar with New Delhi, and that this abrogation would imply that India would now be looked upon as an oppressor in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Anyway, so that's the funny part of how Islamabad looks at its immediate neighborhood. Now, the other point that Indian media has somehow been failing to bring out into limelight is that there was an attempt by Pakistan in 2018 to add Gilgit-Baltistan as the fifth province of Pakistan. Remember
Mm-hmm.
that Gilgit-Baltistan is a part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which is now under the control of Pakistan. Now, Gilgit-Baltistan was some kind of an autonomous region, even under Maharaja Hari Singh in the princely state. Now,
Yeah.
now the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC, passes through Gilgit-Baltistan and then into Pakistan proper. when it comes from China. And because Gilgit-Baltistan continued to be in some kind of an administrative limbo, not being directly ruled from Islamabad, and at the same time not getting any advantages or benefits, China tried to push Pakistan to kind of annex Gilgit-Baltistan into Pakistan proper, and that is when Pakistan made this move. Now, as and when Pakistan announced that it was about to do this, the other part of Jammu and Kashmir, which is under Pakistani control, the Azad Kashmir that they refer to as, and which we refer to as Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the POJK, the legislators from POJK carried out massive protests telling that Islamabad had no right to split Jammu and Kashmir that was in their control and integrate or annex one part of it directly into Pakistan. So this was a direct attempt by Pakistan to split the state while actually considering it to be a disputed territory. Now, if Pakistan accuses India of doing that, it does not have to look too far back. It just have to look at what happened in 2018 in terms of how Gilgit-Baltistan was annexed as the fifth province of Pakistan. So yeah, that's something that the Indian media has failed to pick up or throw light on. So yeah, so Mohal, if we can now talk about what would be the potential steps for Pakistan in the near future?
Yeah, so what happens next is on the question on everybody's mind today. So the initial sense of shock in Pakistan has slowly been replaced by anger, including calls for them to provide, as they say, a befitting response to India at what they consider this to be a provocative step. Now, Pakistan has taken some steps in the meanwhile, like closing of the Wagah border, sending back the Indian High Commissioner in Islamabad, and stopping all cross-border trade. They also, I think, stopped the Lahore bus and also the Samjhuta Express.
Samjhota
Um,
Express, the Thar Express, and the bus as well. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, but these are like mostly cosmetic steps which will have little impact, and it's mostly for satisfying their domestic audience. Now, I mean, as one can see on the Pakistani news channels nowadays, like they've been going pretty ballistic on over this move, which I mean doesn't impact them big time, but the mindset as such been set over the years that it has totally unnerved the Pakistanis. So what happens next? Like a conventional attack, while plausible, is unlikely, but given Pakistan's history of behavior and current position, they already have promised to up the ante by the death by 1,000 cuts of asymmetric warfare strategy. Now, Imran Khan has said on record that incidents like Pulwama are bound to happen again. I mean, implicitly sort of claiming that like Pulwama was their doing. Now, it will look to activate sleeper cells all across India and to conduct spectacular terrorist attacks like Pulwama this year or Mumbai in 2018. On the LOC, like full attempts will be made to sneak in as many terrorists to create more chaos and mayhem in the next few weeks. I mean, they won't want to wait too long because otherwise the issue will die down and there won't be any international focus on it. I mean, in the heart they would also want to add fuel to the fire that is burning in the hearts and minds of some Kashmiris who feel wronged by the decision on Article 370. I mean, there have been reports in the media that the terrorist launch pads are full and they are looking for the right opportunity to infiltrate into Kashmir. I mean, just this past Saturday, one such attempt of the Pakistan BAT or Border Action Team, consisting of Special Service Group, Special Op Forces, and regular terrorists, was neutralized by Indian forces during one such attempt. And many other sectors of LOC have been reporting heavy exchange of fire between both sides. I mean, India has been providing a befitting response in many cases to the Pakistanis who have been taking many losses which are not being reported completely in the media. But as you know, like many of these cross-border firing incidents are usually a cover for infiltration attempts by their terrorists. Now, Pakistan might want to escalate with India in such a way that it invariably invites a forceful response from India. Now, one might wonder, like, why would this do? Because they know that once, I mean, sort of the die has been cast in the terms of response, especially as you saw after the 2016 surgical strike post the Uri attacks, and in 2019 or this year with Balakot airstrikes after the Pulwama suicide bombing. So they know that this is invariably going to invite a kinetic uh, strike back option at Pakistan, at which time maybe they will want to run to Uncle Sam immediately to intervene, so like hold back India, and they would want to internationalize the Kashmir issue to bring other players on the table to hold India back and help them resolve this issue. Now, also looking at secondly, like once the escalation occurs, um, expect Pakistan fully to blackmail US on not cooperating with them on the future proposed withdrawal from Afghanistan. They would likely then say that, hey, because of the prevailing tensions with India, their focus is on the eastern border with India versus in Afghanistan. In this situation, they would want to extract their pound of flesh from Trump and US by insisting on getting involved in Kashmir, including possible mediation as a condition for helping them to US withdraw from Afghanistan in a manner which takes care of American interests. This is basically like, blackmail, saying that, hey, if you don't help me with India, once things have escalated to military affair strikes and stuff, hey, I won't help you with Afghanistan. It's like sort of a implicit blackmail, and
Mm-hmm.
this could very well happen. Still, this yearning for a forceful response from Pakistan to India has put itself in a bind because there are not a lot of options they could put on the table. Just today, like Imran Khan said that they could use their proxy elements to hit at India, but because India has ratcheted up the pressure because of the FATF blacklisting, they can't do that. So in a way, it shows that they are also in sort of a bind that would they use their terrorist proxies to escalate. I mean, the current financial situation that Pakistan find itself today is like not very rosy. I mean, their growth has slowed down to 2.4%. Inflation, which is already at 9%, is predicted by IMF to go to a sky high 13%. And to combat this inflation, Pakistan has raised its interest rate on savings to an astronomical 13.25%, which is like unheard, like unless you have massive inflation. The Pakistani rupee has, in a free fall, has depreciated 30% versus the dollar in the past 12 months and continues to fall every few weeks. Their forex reserves are down to 7.62 billion, which can't even pay for 2 months of exports. Now, as if these economic woes are not big enough, the next meeting of the FATF, Kishore, which I believe is in September, could see it
Yes.
being blacklisted, which would even deal a crushing blow to an already reeling economy.
Yeah. So you are right. The next meeting of FATF is in September, and the way I look at it, there is actually a very very small window for Pakistan also to make use of the situation. Winter hits in by around November, December, which means that there is
Mm-hmm,
hardly 4 to 5 months for Pakistan to play with. But at the same
mm-hmm,
time, Trump also will have to start pulling back troops, at least in a few batches starting, say, Jan, February, because uh, US will essentially get into election mode by May
mm-hmm.
or June, and that is when their primaries will start, and Trump will have to prove a point that he kind of stopped or he kind of pulled back the American troops. So again, there is a
Yeah, and
small
also like I
window.
think today, yeah, there was a report in the print. by Abhijit Ayyar Mitra, where he highlighted that a lot of the military bases in Pakistan or the naval shipyards, they are all empty. Naval bases are
Empty.
empty, so all their military is on the highest alert. And
Uh-huh.
even India, fearing like a Mumbai type attack, has put its navy on the highest alert, fearing escalation. So yeah, something could very well happen in the next few weeks if it was going to happen, but the
Right.
economic situation has put them in a bind on what to do, because they are the janta or the public in Pakistan is baying for blood, and they will have to satisfy that lust for blood of the in that the people are wanting, while also be cognizant of the FATF meeting and probably getting
Mhm.
blacklisted in September.
Now, one immediate outcome has been how Hafiz Saeed has been let out. But this again would be
Yeah,
watched by FATF, and they would obviously question as to why he was let out. And
yeah.
remember, FATF actually has some kind of a score sheet, and letting out of Hafiz Saeed will obviously imply that Pakistan would not score high in that score sheet. So again, it's interesting times, and we need to watch out. Okay, so now let's look at the geopolitical angle, Mohal, and the question everybody kept asking is why to dilute or why to abrogate 317 now?
Yeah, so excellent question. So now one of the questions which many have been wondering is why touch 370 now of all possible times. So one, as I said, is like the withdrawal of US from Afghanistan. Now the withdrawal could take anywhere from, let's say, 9 to 15 months, depending on the agreed timetable between US and
Hmm.
Taliban. I mean, the US elections are 15 months away, so I mean, it could be just before the elections, the withdrawal is complete for Trump to show that he means business. So now there is a possibility that in the vacuum after.
Sorry, yeah, assuming that Trump would win the primaries and then he would have
No,
a
Trump is
good.
going to Trump. There is no Republican challenger, so he is set on the ticket.
Okay, and then also implying that he would start out as the firm favorite, even against any Democrat opponent. Otherwise,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
just
you will have to have some kind of a roadmap starting from
mhm.
9 or 10 months. Keeping
Yeah,
it for too long or 15 months might actually
yeah.
jeopardize his own re-election.
Yeah, I think I mean, the announcement could come very soon as maybe early next month on the,
Right.
so anyway, so there is a possibility that in the vacuum after uh, the US withdrawal, the civilian government would fall and Taliban would retake the country, which could be within a matter of months, or even it could possibly could take years. But let's say like it's earlier and not later, then once Pakistan secures its eastern neighbor, there's a possibility that the extremist forces will be launched against Kashmir, just like they were like 3 decades ago. Now, as per a report in the Hindustan Times by Shishir Gupta on July 5th, so exactly a month earlier, the Raw Chief Saman Goel told PM Modi that India perhaps had a month to fully integrate Kashmir, after which things could spin out of control. Also, like you would do in US would now probably, once striking a deal with Taliban or Afghanistan, could cooperate more with Pakistan, including choosing to reward them for by resuming military and economic aid. Now, this could see an intensification of Islamabad's direct and indirect sponsorship of travel trips operating in Kashmir. So, I mean, and this was soon after this July 5th meeting. Like the we had the Trump Imran Khan meeting where he offered to mediate between India and Pakistan. So
Hmm.
that probably would have spooked the Indian strategic circles that closely US might just look the other way, while Pakistan might now feeling more confident would start to create more chaos in Kashmir. I mean, interestingly, on a sidebar, the Taliban yesterday just released a fascinating statement on the issue, saying that where it urged both India and Pakistan to refrain from taking big steps that could pave a way for violence and complications in the region and usurp the right of Kashmiris. So, I mean, this was an unexpected statement from somebody like a Taliban. because this looked more like a statement from a responsible state actor than a military organization waging a civil war. I
True,
mean, India
true,
on its
yeah.
part can't get fooled thinking that Taliban will not meddle in Kashmir as a future, as some have indicated. But I mean, the probability is still higher, like more than 50% for sure. So now, for Taliban in the closing stages of its ongoing negotiations with USA in Qatar, they don't want any escalations like an armed conflict happening between India and Pakistan, which jeopardizes their deal with the US, and maybe the US now, because of this complications, decides to leave even later than what was agreed upon. So they are also their eyes firmly on the price that awaits them in Afghanistan when US leaves, and like the possible uh, I mean pushing jihadists into Kashmir is secondary for now. So, anyways, coming back to the overall geopolitical angle, I mean, so like India was bit concerned that the once the US seals the deal with the Taliban, it could like have a slightly pro-Pakistan shift. Like I mean, Trump has been really critical of Pakistan since he attained office, but just to get out clean and quick, he won't care about like what happens in South Asia, and then you would just like look the other way. Well, Pakistan would create chaos, so they wanted to preempt that and put this order. Now, coming bit to the domestic angle, I mean, the changes in the article are bound to cause a flare up in the valley region for sure. Now, the government will have to do a slow easing of the clampdown that is currently present in state, and I think there are some steps being taken to clue down to do this. Now, there has to be a fine tune. Like if you lift it too soon, there could be massive bloodshed. While on the other hand, if you keep it too long, it would unleash even more backlash if the people feel they've been subjugated under too much pressure for too long without any chance to vent their frustration and anger. So either way, there is bound to be a surge in violence after the blackout and the curfew and the assembly restrictions are lifted. So I think the next 3 to 6 months through the summer and the fall will be a hard slog for the security forces in the state to keep the situation from spiraling out of control. Let's say in the long run, the worst case, once the winter sets in, the violence should abate and people will get adjusted to this new normal. I mean, the longer it takes for locals to accept this new normal, it will give Pakistan more chances to stir up problems. And this is what exactly Pakistan wants. They want longer amount of chaos so they can politicize and create a frenzy in the friendly Western media publications to internationalize the issue. So it's like uh, but in the long run, this violence should abate. So that gives, especially the next 2 weeks with the state observing Bakri Eid on like August 11th and Independence Day soon after August 15th. How the security forces manage to handle the things over the next 2 weeks up till at least August 15th will go a long way on determining how events unfold in Kashmir. But coming back to the violence part on the domestic side, it cannot go on forever. I mean, as we know that government has been cracking down also on the financial modules
Mm-hmm.
that have been financing the stone pelters and the terrorist network in the state. So it will eventually abate, like even in the long future. So what the government wants to do is they just want to have the uptick in violence and then have it abate maybe 3 months, 6 months, who knows. I mean, hopefully we won't have beyond the winter a huge surge in violence still ongoing, like they had in like the Burhan Wani case. So once the things normalize, if US, by the time US starts withdrawal, the India wants stability in Kashmir with this new so-called normal, that things are under control and it doesn't add fuel to fire in case Taliban cross over to Kashmir then. So I mean, coming back to the decision, I mean, this could have been the sort of thinking that just to they saw a window of opportunity now to do it rather than later, where we could be dealing with a bigger mess. That once the Taliban takes over and they pushes jihadists into the valley, we could have even more violence. At that time, if you abrogate 370 or modify it, you could have even an exponentially larger amount of violence. So that was what the timing, and also importantly, the all the other world powers are sort of entangled in their own headaches at that moment. Like US with this withdrawal with Afghanistan, current tensions with Iran in the Gulf. They have the trade dispute with China. China is experiencing a economic slowdown, and they have the trade war with the US. Britain is busy dealing with the Brexit mess. Europe is experiencing a slowdown and their own problems with terrorism. So I mean, nobody. India wouldn't be bothered if anybody even intervened. But also, the timing would make perfect sense that nobody would be really bothered to poke their noses between India and Pakistan for the moment. Uh, Even if they had certain objections to this
Right.
spiraling, let's say, a little bit out of control. So they just found a strategic opportunity that let's get in before the US withdraws and US starts having a more uh, pro-Pakistan line before, let's say, maybe Taliban captures Afghanistan and pushes it in. And thirdly, the US would sorry the all the world powers are entangled in their own headaches, and obviously the fourth angle, like in the timing I won't discount, is like the massive majority that the Modi government received in the re-election.
And also the fact that China is facing its own backlash in Hong Kong and is
Oh
hell
yeah,
bent
excellent point.
using force to quell
Yeah,
any form of protest there.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm,
if China comes back and tells India not to
mm-hmm,
use excessive force in Srinagar, I think India can calmly
yeah.
ask
Mm-hmm.
China to go take a walk.
So I think the timing is like looks excellent for now. I think in the long run, what we have to, in the short run, we have to make sure that the violence doesn't go out of control, and there will be a gradual release. Obviously, there will be a bloody summer. There could be a bloody summer and fall, but once things set to the new normal, we should be much better off. Uh, let's say going into early next year, and also like
Agree, agree.
importantly the elections will have to be held,
Yeah,
so people will get a chance to vote with their like whatever they think of the current ruling dispensation.
agree, agree. Yeah.
Okay, so that concludes our part for the Article 370 being diluted from a geopolitical, local, and international angle. And also, one more thing, Kishore, before we want to end, like, would be to watch out for any flare-ups over the next couple of weeks because Pakistan is under severe pressure. So hopefully there are no military armed escalations happening over the next few weeks. We all pray that it passes off peacefully and nothing untoward incidents like Pulwama happens.
Hmm.
Okay, so moving on to the recommendations part. So, listeners, if you haven't been listening to the episode for the first time, each episode we recommend you to any book, article, or any other read that we feel might interest you. So, keeping the practice going, Kishore, what is your recommendation for this week?
I have just picked up a book on Shama Prasad Mukherjee. It's titled Prasad Mukherjee and authored by Tathagata Roy. It's a Penguin publication, and it kind of is a biography on Mukherjee and kind of explains in detail how he fought for the abrogation of Article 370 even in the early 1950s. So that is the book that I've just picked up, and that would be my recommendation for this week. Mohal, what are you gonna recommend?
Yeah, so I'll recommend an article by Sushant Sarin on the ORF website, which says
Mm-hmm.
that Pakistan has been punched by India's Article 370 move, which was like a move that the Pakistanis didn't see it coming and they find sort of hamstrung by a lack of options.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so dear listeners, that wraps up today's episode where we covered the dilution or abrogation of Article 370 and the subsequent bifurcation of the state into two union territories. To continue hearing about such interesting topics, do subscribe to our channel India Rising wherever you are listening to us. We would also like to hear from you if you have any suggestions on any topics that you would like us to cover. But do remember that these topics should be directly related to Indian foreign policy. Now, one sad news that came across during the week was the demise of Srimati Sushma Swaraj, former Minister of External Affairs. She passed away in New Delhi at the age of 67 due to a cardiac arrest. In Modi's first term from 2014 to 2019, Srimati Swaraj played the pivotal role in helping the world form a favorable opinion about India. She toured tirelessly around, trying to further the government's cause. Her speech in the United Nations General Assembly explained how India was now considering itself as much more than a mere regional power. But beyond all these, she was known for her attempts to rescue Indians stranded in various parts of the world. Her mammoth efforts also helped in establishing India as the preferred medical tourism destination in the wider Indian Ocean region. Her social media presence was often seen as a strong effort by her individually and by the government in general to interact with the common Indian citizen. She represented India as the MEA in the 2+2 dialogue with the United States last year in New Delhi, which we had covered in one of our earlier episodes. Although she had retired from electoral politics and had not become a minister in Modi 2.0, her sudden demise has shocked the nation and her well-wishers from around the world. Srimati Sushma Swaraj, 1952 to 2019, Om Shanti. Until the next episode, this is Mohal and Kishore signing off.